When news breaks, we go live. That's what we do on Locked On Warriors. Chuck Walter, Matt Kolsky with you. Moses Moody is a Golden State Warrior for the foreseeable and, dare I say, long-term future. 3 years, $39 million is what he is extended on. We're talking about it on today's Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is the good word, everyone? Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen or your last listen of every day. A lot of ways you could check us out. YouTube, give us the thumbs up, subscribe to the show so you get content flowing your way whenever news breaks. Also, live post-game shows and just shows Monday through Friday, so you see a lot of myself and Matt Kolsky. That is Matt Kolsky, who you can also hear on the audio platform. Wherever you get your audio podcast, we are always free and always available. Matt's credentials at KNBR, you can hear him. You can also hear him back in the day on Warriors Post for 95.7 The Game. Before that, you could hear him on Warriors Post for KNBR. It's funny how that works. Life is just a flat circle. My name is Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game, KPIX, which is CBS News Bay Area. That is where I covered the Golden State Warriors and had the privilege of interviewing a young Moses Moody after his first couple Summer League games. Today's episode sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So, of course, that's really what we're talking about on today's show. Moses Moody extended for 3 years, $39 million. Warriors fans out there rejoicing at that news. What does this say about the Warriors' direction, deciding to keep one of their homegrown guys in-house, lock him up to an extension? They have him for the next 4 years. And he's going to be competing with a lot of players, a few that they brought in this offseason at the same position. How does this all work out for Golden State? But let's start with the details. Not a ton to it right now, aside from the fact that it's 3 years, $39 million. So 13 a year for Moses Moody. Seems pretty fair to me. All guaranteed money, a source confirms. Keeps him under team control for the next 4 seasons. Is still trade eligible this season, but the outgoing salary counts as $5.8 million because that's what he's making this year. And the incoming counts as $11.2 million, which is going to make matching any sort of a trade more difficult. But I don't think a trade's incoming. I think they saw enough out of Moses this offseason, this preseason in camp to think that he is worth every bit of $13 million. And I think that's a big signing for the Warriors. Step in the right direction.
If what we've seen in camp and preseason is any indication of who he is, I think it's a heck of a bargain. To give you an idea, that's why I keep staring at my phone over here, if anyone's wondering. I'm just looking at the list of shooting guard salaries. And right now, he is in the Isaiah Joe, Josh Green, Austin Reeves territory. And Reeves is kind of a bargain too, if you ask me. Terrence Mann makes more. Max Strus makes significantly more. Obviously, Klay Thompson, we know, makes more. He's like the 30th highest paid, probably somewhere, 29th, 30th in the NBA. Shooting guard, not wing. Shooting guard, and I think he certainly has the potential to be better than that. And I'm pretty sure, and we'd have to double check this, but if he continues to sign extensions with the Warriors, this affects how much he gets paid in the future too. I'm frankly surprised that he took this deal. Obviously there's security, and I'll say this, I think it shows a lot of faith in the organization from a guy who, from a public perspective, hasn't necessarily been given a ton of reasons to have a ton of faith in the organization, right? Like from where we sit, Chuck, it hasn't been the smoothest sailing for Moses Moody, am I right? But if he's willing to take what is like a market rate for DeAnthony Melton on a 3-year extension, you know, which doesn't even affect his salary for this year, mind you. he's kind of putting his own ceiling at DeAnthony Melton. I have a feeling if he played reasonably well this season, he could have gotten more than that in the open market. That being said, security's nice, and this is great for the Warriors to have him locked up for the near future anyway. And if things go well, that's a great deal to have Moses Moody on if he's playing 20 minutes a game and knocking down threes and defending. I mean, no question.
At the end of the day, it's generational wealth. That's what that is. 13 million, all guaranteed for the next 3 seasons.
Right.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right. As long as you're not done with your money. I mean, you're set, man. That goes a long way.
Yeah, I'm not trying to count anybody's money, and frankly, Moses Moody, you're right. It will be fine. But
it's a good deal for the Warriors. Seems like a good deal based off what he can be.
Yeah, guys make a lot of money in the NBA, and Moses Moody's still quite young. And that's probably part of the calculation here too, right? Is it what, he'll be 25, 26 at the end of this contract? It's not like he'll be old. He'll be theoretically about to enter his prime when he's signing his next contract. So if this one goes well, and I think if you're thinking forward, you know, look, the Warriors may get a really great bargain in year 3, or I guess year 2 of the extension, right? When who knows where Steph and Draymond are at. Yeah, Andrew Wiggins' contract is up by around then. Like, Moses Moody might have a much more significant role on this team by that point, and in that case, earn himself a much bigger next contract. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I think for every possible reason, Warrior fans and the organization should feel good about getting this done at this price at this moment.
Portola 45. 39 million is not generational wealth if you live in tax-heavy California.
I mean, listen, man, 15 million even, and that's I'm giving generously to the government here, but $15 million is still generational wealth if you manage it properly. So agree to disagree. But to his point, it's certainly not. I mean, again, it's not Max Strus money, man. Okay, so like it's great money. I'd love it. I'd love that kind of money. You know, we would be recording in a fancy studio if we had that kind of money instead of in my basement and yours. But it's not that exciting from a what Moses Moody could be standpoint.
Yeah. So he's 22, right? Was the 14th pick, second to last pick of the lottery in 2021, 15.5 points in the preseason, shot at 45% for the floor, 39% from 3 in the preseason, was buried into that third lineup in their first game in Hawaii against the Clippers. So Gary Payton II kind of got the nod over him. I don't know if that was strategic, if that's where, you know, Steve Kerr felt he was in the rotation at that point, why GP2 got the nod. But there is no doubt that in his opportunity in the preseason, 15.5 a game, I thought he was just as impressive as anyone. I mean, considering Curry didn't play a couple of games, and even when he did, he missed some shots. Moses Moody was consistent in every single game. I mean, you look down the box scores, like 21, 14, 12, 18. I mean, he was good, man. He was good. He earned himself some money. So my question becomes, why do you think, based on his lack of playing time, based on I mean, it's good money for what he's produced at an NBA level, right? But based on his potential, why do you think he accepted this right now?
You know, look, people are complicated. I think there's probably a variety of reasons. Some of those reasons might include, like you just said, 2 things you just said. First of all, it's obviously a lot of money, no matter who you are, and no matter how much.
And guaranteed.
Right, and guaranteed. Right? You could be worried about injury. You could be worried about not getting enough playing time this season and therefore not earning better on the market next year. You could just be a heck of a team player who appreciates the sort of high class operation that is the Warriors organization behind the scenes and wants to be a part of it. You know, you might have different priorities than the absolute maximum contract. You might prefer, who knows, living in the Bay Area, again, playing for this business as the organization is run behind the scenes, which, you know, I know, and I think most people realize is one of the best in the NBA. It's hard to know what his priorities are. It does seem like if every last penny was the priority, he definitely had an opportunity to bet on himself here. But as we've said, betting on yourself without knowing how much playing time you're going to get is a very tricky thing to do. And I don't know if he has a better idea than we do how much he's going to play over the course of the season.
That's what we're going to discuss. How much does this extension give you faith that Moses Moody is going to be a mainstay in this rotation? What does it mean for players like Melton and Hield and Andrew Wiggins and Brandon Bajemski? How does this log jam all fit together? We're discussing coming up on Locked On Warriors. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. So when you are betting during the middle of the game, you have a hunch. You think you know what's going to happen next. You think you know that the quarter is going to be an under. You're watching a baseball game, and you think that the next pitch is going to be in the dirt. I don't even know if you could bet that. You could bet whether the next pitch is a ball, and in basketball, you can bet whether the next possession ends with a bucket. And on FanDuel, you can do it all on the same page where you view live play-by-play. You get the latest stats, and you have the wagers right there. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is guaranteed, but you have to place your first $5 bet to get that $200 in bonus bets. You could do it on FanDuel.com, and if you like the Golden State Warriors odds, 43.5 is their over-under win total this year. If you like the over, go ahead, place that $5 bet, get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. You could do that on FanDuel.com. Moses Moody is now higher paid, or will be next year when that contract hits, higher paid than Buddy Hield, than obviously Brandon Bajemski, and is going to be making more money, just a smidge more than DeAnthony Melton. What does this mean about his opportunities and his turn in the rotation?
Boy, it's really hard to say, right? I think it could go either way. I think it could go, listen, he's under contract. We don't really need to worry about how happy he is. So we're not too worried about keeping him happy with playing time, right? It could go, this is now a person we've invested in. He moves up in the rotation. This message that we're just looking at on the screen.
I'll go back. I was just saying hey to my guy, Ernie. Ernie from Concord.
What's happening, Ernie? Listen, that's the ideal scenario, right? If you're not watching on YouTube, Onema King says Wiggins should play the first part of the season to give him a chance to raise his stock. And once he gets some value, he should be traded. Then both Kuminga and Moody starting. It looks like a team. Okay, let's talk about it like this. Because I'm trying to be nice. Andrew Wiggins hasn't necessarily done anything wrong, and he's had a rough road the last couple years for things, stuff that is not his fault at all and is totally human and understandable. And that stinks. However, we've talked so much about how Warriors-y all these new guys are, right? Oh, Kyle Anderson, doesn't he just reek of Warriorsness? Oh, look how well DeAnthony Melton, Brandon Bajemski, what a forever Warriors, halfway through his rookie season. Moody, to a degree, right? I mean, consummate pro, knocks down threes, consistent effort. You never hear these things about Andrew Wiggins. And it just feels like the math problem where they've got too many wing players and it's hard to see where certain guys fit when. The easiest subtraction is Andrew Wiggins. It just feels like they would like to be rid of him, and if not by the trade deadline, then before this Moses Moody extension kicks in.
And that's where it would probably have to be not a multiple team, but a multiple player trade, right? Where you'd have to package either someone young or a draft pick in there with Wiggins, unless he gets off to a guns a-blazing start this season. And here's the deal with that, because we were talking about this on an earlier show that we recorded, and you actually mentioned on that show, like, no, if I'm Moses Moody, like, if I'm not getting playing time this season, why would I want to sign an extension? And there's your answer. He's probably going to be getting some playing time. With that being said, to start the season, you're looking at the potential of Podziemski or DeAnthony Melton in there at the 2, or Moses Moody. I mean, you got 3 guys battling for that spot. And then Andrew Wiggins obviously fighting at the 3 with potentially Jonathan Kuminga. If Andrew Wiggins is indeed still dealing with some of that respiratory illness that is going to take him some 2-3 weeks to get back into full game speed, why wouldn't you bring him off the bench to start and kind of, ease him back in there? It does seem like a little bit malpractice to put him in there when he's not fully ready just because he's Andrew Wiggins. He makes a lot of money and he's done it in the past. I don't know what you get there instead of working him, full speed in practices, getting his run in practices, and then just giving him his spot minutes, getting back to shape in the games. And if that's the case, you would think that a Moody, Kuminga, Draymond Green, Trace Jackson-Davis, Steph Curry lineup is kind of what we're looking at here, unless he slides, Melton or Podziemski in there at the 2. But that's kind of where I'm thinking they're going with this.
Right. Everything you just said makes logical sense, but you did kind of casually mention 4 different possibilities, all of which I think are on the table. And that's what's tricky about this preseason, is because of the various injuries and lack of availabilities, we never totally got to look at anything but a bizarre rotating circus of different combinations, as Steve Kerr like to remind us. So we saw a lot of combinations. I think, as we've understood, Steph Curry and Draymond Green are obvious starters. It seems likely, based on preseason consistency, that Jonathan Kuminga and Trace Jackson-Davis are in there as well. Who that last starter is, the ostensible shooting guard, your guess is as good as mine. Because I'll say it one more time. If it's a meritocracy, my guy merits the start. But I'm not sure it is. At least I'm not sure it's a meritocracy based on the preseason. Or if it is a meritocracy based on the preseason, it may not be, the scale may not be who played the best. It may be what specific things do you want from that player, right? And maybe that means you want Melton or Podziemski if you're Steve Kerr. Or Wiggins. But to your point, he seems clearly not in shape. Or if that is in shape Andrew Wiggins, we have bigger problems. So why not start him on the bench? At the same time, Steve Kerr likes to stick with his lineups when he has them, So if Wiggins is going to be the starter, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the starter on opening night, even if he's still only playing 25 minutes.
Yeah. Big news tonight. Moses Moody extended 3 years, $39 million. I know you got some more comments that you want to get out, Kolsky. We're continuing that, what this says about the Warriors' direction, and getting you ready for the Portland Trailblazers on Wednesday night. A little side note about the Warriors' schedule and why this year, more so than any years in years past, is very vital that the Dubs get off to a hot start. I think you know the reason why. The schedule stinks out of the gate. And the schedule stinks this upcoming week. We're telling you about it. But again, it's the NBA. Who knows if it stinks until the ball's tipped up in the air. Utah can be great. The Lowry, Markkanen grudge match on Friday. We may as well just tell you the entire schedule right now. Wednesday, it's Portland. Friday, it's Utah. Sunday, it's the Los Angeles Clippers. And it does not get much harder than that until it does. The theme of this year's schedule coming up on Locked On Warriors. Show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Halloween can scare some people. I walk the dogs in the neighborhood and see just giant life-size Michael Myers statues that look so real. And I just think to myself, what are you doing trying to scare grown men like that? They're tarantulas on the roof and spider webs. That stuff to me is very scary. But also talking about your feelings. And that's where therapy comes into play. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. The good things about it, it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You go on the page, you connect with your therapist, you get their schedules, you get group schedules, you get different classes you can take on setting boundaries, overcoming fears, talking things over, being vulnerable, whatever it may be. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time, and there's no additional charge. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Let's run through the schedule for the Golden State Warriors. Is Moses Moody gets his 3-year, $39 million contract. We wonder how much he's going to be running at the beginning portion of this season. He's going to be running up against some teams that, at least on paper and at least in the prediction models, are not very good. It'll be Portland on Wednesday, arguably the worst team in the entire NBA. We'll see if that holds to be true. Then on Friday, it's the Utah Jazz, picked by almost all at the very bottom of the standings in the Western Conference. Then on Sunday, it's a Kawhi Leonard-less Los Angeles Clippers. Then after that, the schedule, you got like the Wizards in there, 2 games against the Pelicans. Those will be tough. Then Murderers Row hits. Kind of just give me the theme of what the schedule is through the first month or two this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Pelicans are not the Trailblazers, but they're not the Thunder either. And this schedule comes in these weird sort of blocks of 4, 5, or 7 not so good teams, 3, 4, 5 very good teams. It's interesting, and I think it could. If the Warriors are where a lot of people think they are, which is kind of right between those very good and not so good teams, it could lead to some pretty big swings, runs of winning 4 out of 5, then losing 3 out of 4 kind of thing. And if it's going to be like that, it's all the more critical that these first 2 weeks, those first 7 games go really well. That there's just, again, when a back-to-back, a home back-to-back, so you play the Pelicans twice in 2 nights at your place, and that's by far the toughest out of your first 7 games. If they're not 5-2 after the first 7, I don't want to say it's time to panic, but it's not a great situation. They really need to start the season well, especially because Portland, I mean, look, Utah does have Markkanen, and they've been scrappy, especially early in seasons. They're super well coached. Like, that's not an easy game. Portland is not good, and they don't have a particularly exciting head coach. They don't have a particularly exciting go-to star. They've got some interesting young players, don't get me wrong, but like, that is arguably the worst team in the league. As you said, you have got to come out and beat them up. You've got to.
Yeah, and that's why I think when you saw what the Lakers did in the last preseason game, starting Bronny James, starting Hood Schifino, starting Cam Reddish, whatever it may be, and then the Warriors sent out everyone that is going to be in their starting lineup most likely, along aside from Steph Curry, who's dealing with a finger issue, and keep an eye out on that, see how he looks and what kind of protection he has on that finger to start the season. Jam fingers, nothing too serious, but it does sound like he re-injured it. That's why he was out the previous game. But with the Warriors throwing out that lineup, it does make it seem like this year, as compared to maybe years past, they want to really hit the ground running with this momentum that they've talked about and kind of the vibes that they formed in Hawaii. I mean, they're 6-0 in the preseason. As of right now, this group, all they know is winning. They want to keep that going. So let's get into that. But first, I do want to get to a few things on the chat. For those of you listening on the audio podcast, I will read these for you. Have you guys mentioned that this means Moody is a Warrior for the year now? Not necessarily. Per Anthony Slater, the 3-year, $39 million extension is guaranteed. Yes. So still trade eligible this season, but probably is a Warrior for the season just because he has an outgoing salary of $5.8 million, what he's making this year, but an incoming of $11.2 million, which makes trades trickier. I would expect to see Moses Moody as a Warrior this entire season. Now, Jonathan Kuminga, what's his situation with the contract extension? We'll get into that to finish the show. But first, your reaction to what I said about good mojo and just keeping this thing rolling out of preseason heading into the regular year.
Sorry, I was looking at the 5-8-11-2 thing. So he can still be traded tomorrow if they want to, just to be clear. It's just a lot harder. I think because they're saying the other team has to receive him as $11.2 million. So I don't know totally how that works. Maybe it would have to be to a team with room, with actual salary cap room, which are few and far between, obviously. Sorry, back to the question. What was the question?
I was just saying the mojo entering this season. Like the Warriors seem like they're clicking on all cylinders in the preseason. They have a bunch of new players that had to get acclimated, and instead of taking their foot off the gas like the Lakers did in the final preseason game, just making sure everyone's healthy going into the regular year. I mean, they threw guys out there for 20, 22 minutes, mainly because you would have to think Steve Kerr's still trying to figure out what the hell he's doing about this rotation.
I really do think that's a huge part of it. I mean, yes, they want to maintain momentum. Why the hell not? I mean, I also think you could have beaten that Lakers team without a couple more of your key guys, at least the older ones. Draymond didn't have to play in that game, but he did. And I think that is about maintaining momentum into the regular season. So hopefully it works. I don't know for sure what it means. This is an interesting comment here from Damian. Finding the closing lineup is the most important thing this season because that's the reason we lost most of the games last season. I mean, yes. Finding every lineup is still up in the air, but closing is always more important than opening. And historically, more often than not, the smaller lineup has been more likely to close, which might mean Kuminga at the 4 and Draymond at the 5. And then that's kind of two spots on the wing that are up for grabs if that is the direction they go, and that may depend team to team if they need to defend a 7-footer or not in those last moments. But there's still so many questions to answer. And look, I think we have to say there are so many questions to answer for us. We have to hope and presume that Steve Kerr has answered most of these questions for himself. I mean, yeah, there will be some adjustment as the season goes on, of course, but I would like to think that he knows what he wants to do for the first couple weeks anyway.
Does he know what he wants to do in terms of Jonathan Kuminga? They've now extended Moses Moody. Would it be a shocker to you if they extended 2 players in 1 week? Because that's all the time they have left. Once the season tips off, they have a day or two, and then the extension eligible deadline, it's done.
I'm not sure either side has much incentive to do the Kuminga deal. I think, look, let me explain how I mean that. I'm not sure either side has much incentive to cave to the other at this point. I don't know that there's any reason for Jonathan Kuminga to accept less than a max. I think if he is pretty good this year, not takes another leap, but just even if he has a year this year marginally better than what
are you basing that off Wagner pretty much, just using him as kind of a benchmark?
Yeah, and off the fact that like that kind of talent, his athleticism, his flashes of unbelievable ability is a difficult thing to get if you don't draft it, full stop. Period. You have to draft guys that look like that. Now, will he pan out into a superstar? It's very hard to say. But there are teams that don't have access to a player that looks like that very often, is what I'm saying. And they would offer him the most they can if he is a free agent. And then the Warriors next offseason will have the choice to match that if they want to. And from their perspective, they'll be able to do that with more information. And if he does have a great year and you want to smooth things over, you give him a little extra. You know what I mean? I like that they can offer him a slightly bigger max than anyone else. But unless you think not paying him will lead to him going in the tank as opposed to leading to him going even harder for the big payday.
What's the point? You have the rights. You can match him in the offseason, see what he does, see what Wiggins does. I think that's a huge part of this because if you're looking
who you can move.
Wiggins is a part of the future too, right? I mean, you got him for 3 more years. So if Wiggins bounces back, then I mean, you could trade Wiggins. You can keep them both. You could trade Kuminga. You could kind of make your decision there. But if you're getting rid of one or the other right now, you're in danger of not fully knowing what you have.
And that extension would make Kuminga as difficult to trade as you just made Moody. And if I'm Kuminga, depending on how things are going early in the season, I'm not sure I want to take myself off the trade market, am I?
Good points. Good points. By the way, that deadline's October 21st. So it's tomorrow. So it is on Monday. Thank you to TLC for clarifying that. I was thinking 24th for some reason, but it's October 21st, and the 20 players that were eligible to extend, it's now up to 5 players. I believe Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, and now Moses Moody, Moses Moody. Moses Moody, the Warriors' potential starting shooting guard this season. Is that going to happen? Who knows? What we do know is that he doesn't need to press, man. He's someone that, he's kind of been somewhat passive, and now the time is his. He's got nothing to prove. He's got his money, all guaranteed, $39 million, generational wealth. He's shown that he could play, averaging 14 points in this preseason. Time to take it to the regular season and see if every Warriors fan that thinks this guy is a diamond in the rough, it's time to see if they're all geniuses, right? It's time to see if the Locked On viewership has seen something in Moses Moody all along.
To be fair, they drafted and developed these guys, right? So I know it's frustrated Warriors fans, and myself included at times, that Kuminga and Moody in particular haven't gotten better.
They were riding Klay Thompson until the wheels fell off, though. And now that the wheels have fallen off, the only argument you can make is Melton and Hield. Did you need both? If you're trying to get Moody some minutes.
I don't know that the Warriors got every first choice they wanted this offseason, and I think if they had, it might look a little different positionally. But
I just got the best players they could get.
I think that's what they did.
We'll figure it out on the back end. Yep.
But again, players that fit in a way that just they're pretty stacked at a couple of positions. I also think that they wanted to stack assets because, we don't want to beat a dead horse, but at the same time, we're going to be talking about the potential of a trade and sort of there's going to be like a trade likelihood meter going up and down all throughout the first half of the season. That's just the way it is. That
was Bonte's. Bonte had that panic meter. This year it's going to be the trade meter. Yeah.
The likelihood of trade meter. That's right. I really think that's what we're looking at here because it just you keep looking at the math for the amount of minutes you have to play guys at the 2, 3, and even 4 and say doesn't math. It doesn't work out. There's too many dudes. So we'll see. We will see as far as the trade front goes. But in some ways, these are good problems.
Yeah. And that's a good contract. That's a good. I don't think anyone's complaining about 3 years, $39 million for Moses Moody. What they've seen, how young he is, the size that he has for his position, shot at 39% in the preseason. You're not going to complain, man. You're not going to complain.
If Moses is happy, I'm thrilled, frankly.
He's always got a smile on his face. That's another thing is when I had him on the CBS show years ago. I think it was right after they won because I remember asking him what he was gonna name the book that if he was a hypothetical world-renowned author and you wrote a book on this year's season, what would the title be? And right away, he just went, "Holy cannoli." I was like,
You know what, dude?
smart man. But they all said he's the best. Like every single member of Warriors PR, that like this guy, he's just mature beyond his years.
Well, but that's the other thing too. I mean, you're talking about a kid that came to this organization, which again treats people well. He came here at 19 years old. He won a title. Like, we may look at it, some people may look at it and say, probably could have gotten more on the open market next year. And he may look at it and say, seriously, what more could I want?
I'm a Golden State Warrior, and I got $39 million in the bank.
Life's been pretty good for him here.
Yeah, it has not been too bad whatsoever. Find the Locked On Fantasy Basketball, everyone. Become a fantasy basketball expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Josh Lloyd. That's the Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Kolsky and I got coverage this week. We're going to talk about the Warriors preseason and what we learned from it. There's still a lot to figure out. It starts with the rotations. That'll be Tuesday's show. It was going to be yesterday's show, but we'll bump it over to Tuesday now that we got one on the Moses Moody news. And then we'll have a Portland Trailblazers little season preview and a little schedule watch, which we got into today a little bit. But that's coming up on this week. And then Wednesday, it's the Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trailblazers from Portland. And then on Friday, they take on the Utah Jazz. Sunday, the LA Clippers. And we will have games, real games and real post-game shows.
Let's go.
For the hundreds of you that watched us live tonight, be sure to tune in as soon as the buzzer sounds. And I mean as soon as the buzzer sounds. Kolsky and I are on it. We pinch ourselves if there's a delay on our TVs and we're about 10 seconds late. We like to do it with about 8 seconds as they're dribbling out the clock. So hold us accountable. And while you're at it, subscribe to the show. Leave us a review if you like it. And we will see you soon. Kolsky, good night, man.